So I know what you're thinking as you just opened up this presentation that, hey, Steve, why is there all this finger paint here over St. Thomas, Culebra, and Vieques and St. Croix? Well, I got some bad news for you. You can try to scratch it away all you want. It's not a lottery ticket. That's not finger paint. That's weather and um, substantial weather at that, which leads us into today's title of the presentation. The weather depiction is your dreaded affliction. Affliction being a great word choice to describe weather and what it means to you as a radar controller, right? What you see here is radar derived weather that you will have to call and make aircraft aware of, right? So we jump into chapter 2 where they provide some excellent guidance on phraseology, format, how to call weather, and a little bit of background information. So the subtitle is Exploring How to Make Mother Nature Proud. Well, you're going to do your best, right? She's very hard to please, right? And she has an agenda of her own, as you can clearly see as this screenshot from a tropical storm moving over the airspace. So we're just going to go over some fun things, how to say it correctly, right? Always that phrase that fits, and how you can work through a little scenario using positive separation and some techniques, right? Some suggestions to put in that ever-growing tool belt, right? So you face weather as best as possible. Believe me, you will leave a sector that you had filled with weather. You'll leave that sector after somebody gets you out feeling fatigued, relatively sacked, but you know that you'll have done a great job because of what we're about to go over. So without further ado, let's get into it. That was a great introduction. I will see you at the next slide. Weather clearly is a pain in the you-know-what, right? Multiple body parts, right, that are sore relatively often that you can describe weather as, and you would find that phrase that fits, right? Focusing on chapter 264, issuing weather and chaff services. Like I said, this is geared more to the radar trainee because, like we said, the weather is radar derived. You are looking at your targets, right? The aircraft under your care, and the weather is depicted on your radar scope, right? There is only so much you can do non-radar wise with aircraft and weather services, right? But here we're going to start off with the meat and potatoes. In the subsequent videos, we'll get to PIREPs and SIGMETs, AirMets, and all that fun stuff. We'll get there, but we figure we start off with this so you can start practicing phraseology because you will get this down pat through repetition. Okay, so calling weather to aircraft, approving weather deviations, show how deviations change the clearance phraseology to follow, right? How you stop aircraft, and once they are deviating, right, a deviation that you approve, they're no longer on their route of flight. They're on a segment of the route of flight that is no longer defined in the flight plan. So you have to start providing instructions, right? So this chapter is excellent to go over, even after this video is complete, to see what other options you can give aircraft, right? Go over scenarios in your head. Now, also, there will be subsequent videos. I also planned on putting out a radar flashcard to follow this. So I'll put targets up, put some weather up, and you can have added to your heart's desire of different phraseology and stuff like that. So today's a quick video, and it is leading up to some subsequent videos that kind of follow in line. Just like we did with Berinkin, we did multiple parts. I promise you we will follow up with multiple parts for weather. So techniques to follow, right? Purely techniques. Remember, always follow the instruction of your training team and your trainers and your supervisor, right? Follow their instructions. This is just one opinion from one person. And yeah, so without further ado, ready, set, jets, go. Let's go to a sector scenario. I'll see you there. Okay, so look at us. We are met with a sector 6 with some weather. And just put on the suspension of disbelief, right? We're in that Mr. Rogers land of make-believe. That is Microsoft Paint-derived weather, not radar-derived weather, but we can make this work, right? This will certainly send the point home. So to condense some of the things that the 7110 says in chapter 2, referring to weather, this is the first and most prudent point. Next weather radar, which we have here in San Juan, right, displays moderate in blue, heavy in orange, and extreme in red. Okay, now the 7110 outlines that precipitation can be classified and disseminated, right? When you're making these reports, making these weather calls, it can be disseminated as light, moderate, heavy, and extreme. Okay, we don't show light, so if you get a PIREP or somebody classifies it as light, you can throw it in there, but it will never be depicted for you to make that deduction. Okay, so good to get that out of the way here. You see we have one aircraft that is under our control, Southwest 1585, a San Juan lander. So let's start mentally preparing for what this scenario is going to be, right? We have to get this aircraft safely on the ground, and definitely not going through that weather. We can almost deduce that Beano, right, the fixed Beano, the Beano arrival gate, is more than likely closed. Okay, and we see that that area of weather is also clouding the Coney Jaws departure gate. So now we are looking at head-on situations here, which we always love to endure and work our way through. So I'm excited. Let's see how this scenario progresses, knowing with what we have in mind here with the weather and some subsequent points to follow. Okay, see you there. Okay, so like I said, these bullet points and the subsequent slides to follow with all the phraseology and examples are going to cover just one of the phraseology suggestions made in the 71 out of 10. But this is the most used weather call locally at San Juan. It's the one that fits, right? The most descriptive and capable to ensure all necessary information is given in an easy to learn format. Not only easy to learn, but easy to digest, or hear and take in for pilots, right? It follows here, like plug in a call sign and just plug in some random information and you can make your way through this. You don't even need a scope to practice this. Just follow this and plug in call signs, types of weather, and have at it. Area of intensity, right? Light, moderate, heavy, extreme. Precipitation between, just like a radar call, right? You're going to describe the numbers on the clock. Number of miles, good. So you give a range. Moving, which is good. If you can see a trend of movement, right, if applicable, if you have been sitting at the session or at the sector for a relatively long time and you notice a trend moving, or maybe the weather is associated with a SIGMET, right, which we'll cover, right? If it's associated with a SIGMET, it'll give some movement to it, right? And the speed, if known, right? Yet again, if applicable, and tops, if known, right? All this is based upon how good of information you are being provided from the SIGMET or pilot reports and whatnot, and the diameter in miles. So a lot of stuff there to provide. It's a long-winded report, but in the sense of trying to be as brief as possible, but as thorough as possible, this is a perfect phrase that fits, right? I use that term a lot, phrase that fits, because that's exactly what you're looking for. So just plug in a call sign and practice all you like. So you can pause it, start practicing, all that good stuff. Be proactive. Now you try, right? We're going to go back to the sector. Here we go. One other thing that I should have covered maybe in the last slide, but I didn't. The 7110 has one relatively large caveat. I'm pretty sure it's italicized. Make sure you do not reference turbulence or any of the intensity of turbulence in a weather report, right? What you see on the radar does not symbolize, does not represent any kind of turbulence activity that might be taking place. Okay, so let's go. Give it a shot. Next slide. See you there. Okay, so let's start with a very basic example, right? If you want to try it yourself before we go over it together, I suggest you pause the video now, ahora mismo, and we'll get back to it. Okay, so if you did pause it, welcome back, and here's what we will do. Southwest 1585, we know is on frequency, right? We have track control over it, and the key is to be proactive, right? They're still minutes, tens of minutes away from requesting a descent, possibly requesting a deviation, right? But the best part about our range as a center controller is you have the big picture, right? Center controllers always have the big picture, right? If you're the D side, you know things about anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes in advance. The radar is no exception. That aircraft still has lots of track miles to go, but guess what? Nothing is precluding you from getting a head start. So I would do this. Southwest 1585, area of moderate to extreme precipitation, 11 to 1 o'clock, 121 miles, moving northwestbound, tops flight level 230, area 45 miles in diameter. Perfect. You see, just plug in some call signs, plug in some fake weather, and just have at it, right? That's the real thing. Perfect. So that's it. That's being proactive. They may not respond to you right away, give you they'll acknowledge you, of course, but they may not have a course of action ready yet. Our weather radar has a longer range than their airborne weather radar, right? They have really good weather radar that presents to them a whole slew of things, but the range is not as far as ours is, excuse me. So we have a better vantage point in this situation. So why not share that better vantage point? So, okay, food for thought. See you at the next slide. Great job with that. That wasn't so bad, right? An example that you can constantly go over, hone, and perfect the phraseology, right? Just keep working at that. But let's build on this. Let's build on this scenario, right? We have one aircraft, a blob of weather. Let's start adding some factors, okay? So back to the sector we go for some dynamic introductions, okay? See you there. Okay, so welcome back to the sector. We have Southwest 1585 still working, cooking up their response to our initial weather call, and we take the handoff on American 1496, the Philadelphia run, the heavy Airbus A330-300, wonderful aircraft, and they are established on the Coney 3 departure, so we know that they're going to be going through this weather, or not through it, but they're going to skirt around it with the help of you, the controller. So let's just pick up from where we left off. San Juan, Southwest 1585, requesting lower. What's the best course to avoid the precip? So if you want to try this yourself, right, and approve a deviation and so on and so forth, give it a shot. Maybe you've been studying already, but if not, think about what you will have to do. So here's what I'm thinking right away. I see American 1496. They're on the Coney. I don't have the strip yet because that's going to be real life, right? Maybe the strip has not made its way over to you yet to analyze the entire route of flight, but I know enough now to make a judgment call. We're going to have to go positive, right? We use non-radar techniques still here on the scope, right? I cannot determine the course of action that American 1496 is going to want to take to deviate around that weather. I know eventually, though, they will leave the San Juan Center airspace from the northwest, somewhere along that Miami boundary. And guess what? I know, coincidentally, Southwest 1585 is going to need to go to San Juan Airport, right? Some means, and they're not going through Bino. That is blatantly obvious. So I know that at some point, there are protected airspaces that American 1496 is entitled to, and we ensure is going to possibly conflict with the positive controlled airspace that Southwest 1585 is entitled to occupy. Just a little tangent here. If you think of air traffic control as just merely not causing collisions between aircraft, well, you're kind of right, but you're kind of wrong, right? Chances are, the big sky theory, right? Lots of cubic miles up in the sky, aircraft will probably never hit each other, right? Very seldom they would, with TCAS and pilots looking out the window and just overall luck, they would never hit each other, right? We don't depend on that, though. The beauty and the profession is built upon ensuring that an aircraft's protected airspace, positively protected airspace, never touches, right? We are ensuring that the 5-mile circle around Southwest 1585 and the 5-mile circle around American 1496 will never even come close, right? Have you ever looked outside of an airplane and you see another airplane, you see how far they are away? Or sometimes, have you ever flown a flight, maybe a transcontinental flight, and you look out the window and you see no other aircraft until you start to approach the terminal area or when you depart? That's the beauty of the air traffic control system. We do such a good job of making the pilots and the passengers think that they're the only aircraft out there. It's pretty cool. So think of it that way. You're not preventing Southwest and American from hitting each other. No, you're not really doing that. You're making sure their protected airspaces don't touch, which is a very admirable feat. Okay, so enough with that tangent, heartwarming stuff. Here it is. So, like I said, we're going to go positive. So I'm thinking to send Southwest, once he's in my airspace, of course, to 25, right? Force them down, right? No pilot's discretion, force them down, right? Because what is very beautiful about what we're trying to cook up here is get Southwest down, get American up. Hopefully we have enough lateral separation that might still exist, even with them deviating, where we create the swap, right? American's able to climb to 26, Southwest is able to descend at 25. We find that 1,000-foot buffer, and then the aircraft can deviate, descend, and climb to their heart's desire. But the point is you have to make that swap happen. Sector 6 is roughly 130 miles, maybe 140 miles from Calto to Bino. So you have to make that happen right away. So if you have that opportunity, do it. Just make sure they're in your airspace first. So let's go with that plan. Southwest 1585 passing Calto, descend and maintain flight level 250, stand by. Why the standby? Well, I just gave them the descent clearance. So far right now, I don't have a best course of action. I just sat down and maybe they didn't mention in the briefing about what aircraft had been doing around that blob of weather around Bino, right? Maybe Southwest is my first arrival that I've had. And not only my session, but maybe the controller before me didn't have a San Juan arrival for 15, 20 minutes, and that weather just recently grew, right? There's a lot of factors at play. So I don't know yet, but stand by. Still got plenty of time to give Southwest some detailed information. Boom, took the handoff. The strip made its way to me, and it's American 1496. And look, as luck would have it, they aren't even going over Dong Ku today. They're going over Sapo. So they will get tangled up with Southwest, pending Southwest deviation to the southeast, which I imagine is probably going to be the case. They're probably going to go over this Sailor Gate. But more on that in a little bit. So American 1496, I see San Juan 23 Sapo, Yankee 280 Octal. That's all I need to know. So eventually I get this aircraft to Sapo or somewhere near that. Fair 1 Center, American 1496, climbing 10,000 direct to Coney. Very typical call sign, kind of oblivious to the weather. Maybe the departure controller did or did not give them the weather. That's okay. Let's do it anyways. American 1496, San Juan Center, climb maintain flight level 240, right? Good, 240 in T, right? Because we have Southwest pre-planning the 25. Climb maintain flight 240, area of moderate to extreme precipitation, 12 o'clock, 7 miles moving northwest, top flight level 230, area 4.5 miles in diameter. Boom. Perfect. Good job. That initial check-in, this is not a clearance item, right? So don't be intimidated or thrown off by what we said earlier in earlier presentations about not giving long clearances or giving long clearances, right? We want to chunk this up when we're giving clearance items, but this is not. This is purely an advisory. So say as much as you can, slow, thorough, but you don't have to worry about confusing them. You're just giving them a report. If they didn't catch it all, they can ask you, right? It's not separation related here. So just think of it that way. So yeah, so American 1496, San Juan Center, climate maintain file 240, area of moderate to extreme precipitation, 12 o'clock, 7 miles. Moving northwest, topside level 230, area 4.5 miles in diameter. Perfect. Kind of an abrupt end to that, but this brings us to here, right? Just to take that inventory that we are known to do in these presentations of what is going on. Okay, so anticipate, right? Always project, always be projecting where you're sending the aircraft, projecting what the aircraft are going to want. We know that weather is something to deal with there, and pilots do not want to lead their aircraft into weather. So anticipate. American 1496 is going to want to deviate. Good job ensuring positive separation with Southwest 1585. Good job with that right off the bat. Good. You're putting together a plan. Is American 1496 in your airspace? Some food for thought, right? We don't have control for turns. San Juan departures, right? We have control for climb, obviously, but we're going to have to coordinate accordingly. Let's try to solve this by not using Sector 8, right? The immediate thought that may have entered your mind when seeing American 1496 bound to Sapo, right, turning northwestbound, and Southwest landing San Juan is, hey, just put them through Sector 8. That's a great idea. I would encourage you to do that anytime. Right? Whatever's easier for you. But try to keep it in your sector. We're going to keep this in our sector because sometimes you will have to. Sometimes there'll be weather over Joshi, and that's where you would be sending that aircraft, right, over the Joshi gate. So let's pretend that there's weather also over there too, and that is not an option. Okay? Let's keep it within our sector. Let's keep these two aircraft on our frequency here as an R4 and R6 controller. Okay? Phrases that fit. Here we go. Some 7110 stuff right out of the book. Here we go. First one, deviation, right? That's phraseology. Deviations, restrictions if necessary. Deviations up to 20 degrees left of course approved, 15 miles left of course approved, 15 miles right of course approved. When able, proceed direct to a fix, VOR, whatever, any kind of navigator fix. Perfect. Yet again, pause, plug it in, give it a try. Next one. Deviations, restrictions if necessary. Approved. When able, fly heading, number of degrees, vector to join airway, and advise. Perfect, right? You don't want them to proceed direct to a fix. You want them to rejoin an airway, or in this case, this would be perfect. American 1496 deviations, 15 miles, right of course approved. When able, fly heading 300, join the Oconee 3 departure, right? Going back on the procedure, but this time with sector 6, the size of it is, and we have these boundary fixes, we're probably looking to give them direct SAPO. But just remember, you can have them do whatever you want them to do after they're done deviating, whatever works for you. Make that happen. And this is the phraseology that empowers you and gets that message across for you to do so. And next one, deviation, restrictions if necessary, approved, advised, clear of weather. Great. You don't have much to say. You just want them to get out of the weather and advise. That's perfect. Maybe you don't have a course of action right away. Maybe you don't know exactly what could be approved. This would happen if you're working sector 4 or even sector 2 and they're bound for non-radar airspace, right? Airspace that you need to decide to coordinate something further down the way and you don't quite have that information yet, right? Maybe it's a tedious sector, right? Maybe it is. And D2 is known to be tedious and ever dynamic. So just recall that sometimes you don't have the best course of action right away. It's not abundantly clear. Maybe you're waiting on a PIREP, right? Something to tell this aircraft. So you can also kind of stall, still approve the deviation, and just advise clear of weather. Then you can talk about, hey, what do you want? What do you need? Anyway. And then there's always unable, right? So if you are unable in action, right, most likely due to traffic, right, or even another blob of weather that you haven't had a chance to call out yet, right? There might be a subsequent weather cell. There might be traffic, right? You may have to unable and offer a heading and a way out for them. Okay, so we're not going to really cover that example, but you can see how it'll happen, and maybe we'll cover that in the radar flashcards in the subsequent presentation. So unable, request a deviation, fly heading, advise clear of weather. Okay, perfect. Now back to the sector. Okay, so here we are. We have a couple of things pending, right? We told Southwest we'd get back to them, and we still have American 1496 to give us some information as to what their intentions are. So let's keep it going, starting with coordinating accordingly and getting control. R1R5, R6 request control. R1R5 request control. American 1496 for deviation. American 1496 approved as requested. Sam 1, American 1496 would like 15 miles right of course. Perfect. They got back to you, said what they wanted. American 1496, deviations 15 miles right of course approved. When able, proceed direct SAPO. Very simple. You're going to use this phrase a lot, right? Chances are San Juan is a small enough center where a boundary fix is going to do the trick, right? You don't need to give short range clearances to have them rejoin airways and procedures because of the size, right, and the nature of our area, right? The en route area in San Juan, area 1 is only one area. Area 2 is the approach, right? We don't have multiple areas where there has to be fourth line data. I mean, MicroEars doesn't even have the capability for fourth line data, so you won't even have to worry about that here. So chances are a boundary fix will do the trick. Very seldom will it not, and you'll learn those situations as they appear, because I can't think of one right now why you wouldn't just want to use a boundary fix. So, okay, keep the conversation going. Southwest 1585, right? We're getting back to them. Southwest 1585, deviations left of course approved. When able, cleared to the San Juan Airport via direct sailor direct, maintain flight level 250. Perfect. The proactivity that we were talking about, you being proactive, is perfect. You said, hey, Southwest, guess what? Deviations left of course is probably best, right? You're hinting around that. And you also gave them a new simple clearance, right? One fix direct, putting them over the sailor gate, ensuring the positive separation. And that's really well done. That's something that you would want to do. Now, the subsequent activities to follow would be continue to maintain positive separation as American 1496 makes their deviation and is back direct SAPO. Southwest 1585 will be on that left deviation until they cross paths with American 1496, and you can give them a respectable sailor restriction, right? You see, all of this is based upon you being proactive, you seeing what is available for the pilot from the information that you see derived from your radar, right? What you're seeing being depicted is your judgment call mixed with your proactivity, and giving that information to the pilots through clearances and advisories is how you resolve weather. Now, you're going to be talking a lot, right? We're only talking about 2 aircraft here, right? Think about it. There would be aircraft in succession, constantly arriving and departing, overflying. But this example is enough to have that spark be ignited and thinking, okay, this is how this works. This is how weather works, right? So I hope that you took something away from this or some phraseology examples. Like I said, we'll get some radar flashcards out to you and a whole bunch of other wonderful items. But basically, that's it, right? Ensure positive radar separation. Most likely go vertical, as the saying goes. And as soon as you see there is an inkling of lateral separation, or they targets have passed, right? Targets have merged. You gave merging target procedures traffic calls, and they passed. You have some sign of separation, right? 5 miles. Then hurry up and start getting them down because they might be traffic with somebody else, right? Don't keep the aircraft suspended too long, and don't keep the aircraft flying low for too long, right? One wants to climb, one wants to get down. Use that to your advantage, right? Use that fact to your advantage. So very good. Like I said, a brief presentation, a brief entry into weather. I can't wait to cover other concepts with you and give you some quote unquote radar flashcard homework to go over and practice yourself. But this is fun, and you should really just enjoy this in this environment because it will not be nearly as enjoyable in this sector. I promise you that. So we're trying to just polish this turd up a little bit. Okay, see you at the exit slide. Like the Jimmy Buffett line says, the weather is here. I wish you were beautiful. So listen, after dealing with that blob of ugly weather northwest of the island of Puerto Rico, you should be treated to this wonderful view of weather that is wonderful and not going to show up on radar and not cause any kind of deviations. So like I said, part one's complete. You guys did a fantastic job with that. Rewind it, go over it. We'll get you get some radar flashcards in the mix, but we covered the phraseology, right? Now remember, like I said, this is just one technique, right? You have other phraseology blocks of text available to you. So continue to look at chapter 2 and see where it, under weather and chaff reports or something like that, you can find a phrase that fits. But this is going to be the phrase that you use most often because it's complete, thorough, and provides the best description of what exactly you are seeing and painting that picture for the pilots. Also remember my technique of forcing an aircraft down right away and stopping at intermittent altitude. 25 and 24 are my go-tos when weather is involved, right? And we go from there, force the swap. If not, at least 24 is a good altitude initially to assign, and 25 is a great altitude to initially assign a descending aircraft, right? After they pass, they both have a best chance of making it level by the boundary and the best chance of making any kind of crossing restriction you give at the inbound gate. So great job with that. It is fun. Like I said, not quite as fun as it will be in real life. And I say that rolling my eyes. So yeah, so I'll see you at the next presentation. We'll cover some other aspects of weather in this wonderful center of ours. But until then, may your attitude be just like your separation, positive. My name is Steve, and I'll see you at the next lecture. Bye, guys.